Hey everybody, Riz here. Promised I'd do get back to the Fiberglass Fridays here. No time to edit, so I'm going to try and make this in one take. So any fumbles, I excuse now if I get verbal diarrhea or something. So just a few things we want to cover. Something came up the other day on the forum, and I don't think we've ever talked about it. And I thank Neil on the forum for bringing it up. He had an issue where, like, I mix mine at about 16 ounces at a shot to do of resin to do my fiberglass. So the problem he was getting was it was turning, he'd get about halfway through and it started turning to gel. It gets all jelly-like inside. So there's a few things for that, and I think we got to the point at the very end there was, one, keep your stuff at room temperature. Keep your catalyst at room temp. Try and keep your resin at room temp, warm. Try like in the 70, 72 degrees, you know, like 22-ish of Celsius, 20. Just keep it warm. It keeps from happening with that gel sort of a thing. The other things can be is if you're doing multiples. So say I've poured 2-3 cups of resin. I've gone through my first one, and then I get to my second one, and I put my catalyst in and I stir it, but I use the stick that I used on my first one. So that stick, unless you've got acetone and you took a cloth and you wiped that stick clean, what you've got on there is what we call hot resin, right? It's already kicking off, and then you're gonna put that into your new resin and you're gonna stir, and that's gonna start kicking it off sometimes, okay? Not always, sometimes. So what the biggest culprit is the same thing. You're on your second cup and you've got your brush that you've been using on your first model here, and you're moving on to your next piece, a fresh thing of resin, and the first thing you do is you take that brush and away you go. Well, you'll find you get about 3 dips down and you start getting a spot that's jelly-like. That's because the same thing. Your brush has gotten hot, like the resin is really kicking off on it. So what I do is I always have 2 or 3 brushes in acetone, right? Acetone's our friend for the resin. Soaking all the time. So when I finish the one, I'll drop it into the acetone, and then I'll grab another one, a fresh one, a quick shake, because acetone evaporates almost instantly, and you're good to go. So you got a nice clean non-hot resin brush to go on your net. And if I go to a third one, I'll switch again and switch the brush off and put it. It's a good tip. Like I remember when I first started, that used to happen to me, and it took me a while. Nobody ever told me why, and then you sort of figure it out on your own. So I just keep it in a jar. If you don't have a jar that's tall enough, your little gloves make a good little cover for your little acetone. Give it a shake and then put it on the back counter, and you're good to go. The other thing I was going to mention about the glass is we'll move on to separating the seams. We've talked about it before, videos way back, but let's just go over it. It's a fresh season, new people on. So you've got 2 seams together, right? You've got 2 seams here together, and I'm gonna, when the next one gets glassed, there'll be another fresh seam here. So how do you separate those? Is I take a little of my wax, separating wax, and I put it on a putty knife. When your glass is kicking off and it's still quite warm, you're going to want to go in between the 2 of the layers and run your putty knife down the length before it gets too hard. If you wait till it really, it's gotten hot and now it's cooled off, sometimes it's too late to be able to get your tool in there. If it is a little tough to get it in there, if you can get your tool in, or maybe I'll use this as an example, say you're in here, then you take a nice flat screwdriver or a chisel and get it in between, and then give it a little pop, a twist, and then you can help pop those seams open on there. So you'll need that a lot if you all the seams. It's a good idea. Like I cheat, I go quite early. You got to be careful you don't get too early, because you'll sort of rip the fiberglass if it's too soft, and then you're going to have a problem. You're going to have these funny little resin threads and glass threads that you can't deal with very well. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is I always do all my models, all the fiberglass work first before I do any legs, any cutting, whatever. So in a few weeks, I'll be getting at it. So what I use for smaller ones, let's see if I can unplug this for you. I don't know if you can see that, it's so far away. So on my Dremel, I use a 4300 or a 4000s are good too. They're a little more power. There's a little diamond blade on the end of it. So I like it for these smaller models because you can really cut and turn nice sharp corners on these little ones. For a big model like this, on the edges here, I'll use my angle grinder with a big diamond blade because it's easy, much easier, much faster to get in. But for these little ones, see, when you have an angle grinder and you're trying to do a tight turn on here, it's really hard. So that's where these things are beautiful. I go through these things I crave about every second year. I gotta buy a new one because they're just kaput, they're just worn out. But they do a great job for stuff like this. But I just wanted to mention, I don't know if you can see this on the camera there. You see all these little hairs? These are little hairs that didn't get resin on them. Here, and I'll show you where that comes from. That comes from the end of your glass, right? If you've got a shredded up end, and then that's sticking up. Before you go to cut, you want to get some scissors or some, I can't find my scissors, some utility scissors or even some tin snip, and just go through and snip those off. The reason is, when you're using this Dremel and you're cutting, these things wrap around the shaft and you can burn your motor out like in a second with that. So just make sure you trim those all off, and then when you're cutting, it's nice smooth sailing. But if you don't, you're going to go along and it's going to grab a couple of these fiber hairs and it's going to twist on the shaft here of the Dremel and the mandrel, the piece that goes inside, and it's going to twist up and inside, and it's going to seize your motor. So be really careful with that. So that's why I like to go through and just kind of clip those off really, really fast. So the other thing I just wanted to mention this week is, I've talked about it before, but I don't think I ever made it clear. You've seen me before, I don't have an example of it right now, maybe in the background, I don't know if you can see. You see that model back there with the cardboard on it. I use cardboard for my fiberglass seams. Some people use aluminum tape. There's lots of different things you can use for making a bounce. Some people still use clay. For me, clay isn't practical because I have so many multiples. Like, I'm always working on 5, 6, sometimes 7, 8 pieces at a time. It would take me a ton of clay. If you go one at a time, you're at your house or whatever, as a hobby, clay is awesome for building a little wall. But some people have said to me they don't like to work with the cardboard. It's too hard to work with. But I never did mention what kind of cardboard I use. It's very thin. It's 1 millimeter, this stuff. It's a special packaging. It's super stiff. It's more stiff than regular cardboard is, but it's super thin, and it's really easy to manipulate to build your walls with. If you cut it on the same way of the corrugation, you can just roll it up like this, and it's terrific for getting around corners or building little corner walls. It's awesome. So that's 1 millimeter as opposed to regular cardboard boxes. Regular cardboard is like about 5 mil, right? So that makes a big difference. To try and manipulate this thick, heavy cardboard is a pain in the butt. So I think sometimes maybe I never mentioned that I use this really super thin 1 mil stuff. And I could see the frustration if people are trying to use a 5 mil cardboard, trying to build little walls. It would drive you nuts. So if you get your hands on this stuff, I'm lucky my wife sells party light candles, and these are the boxes that they're shipped in. So it's awesome. I love this stuff. I take all of her boxes, but there is other stuff you can get. I find a lot of stuff you get from Amazon and that sometimes is packaged in a 1 mil cardboard as well. So if you can get your hands on it, it's awesome stuff. And if you don't like using cardboard, use whatever you want to use. It's fine. I'm just passing on what I use or what I found to be, good for me. So you can do whatever you feel like. So anyway, everybody, so that's it for this week for Fiberglass Friday, and we'll have another one for you next week. Maybe even a little sneak one in between. See you guys. Bye-bye.